And we are recording on Monday, November 21st, 2022, episode 996. So close. So close to 1,000. Should be tomorrow. Um, with Mr. James Koutoulas, who's been on here. You've been on here a couple times before, and you actually brought it up, and I thought it was a good idea was to discuss FTX, the FTX scandal, what is allegedly has been postulated to be a kickback scheme, but I don't know if that's a certainty, so I don't want to slander anybody. But before we jump into it, James, introduce yourself for everybody, man.
Sure. Yeah. So my name is James Koutoulas. I do a couple different things. I run a hedge fund, type on capital management. We have an award-winning crypto fund as well called the Leonidas Cryptocurrency Fund, where we've successfully avoided all the scummy crypto projects such as $0 in FTX or FTT exposure, none in Celsius, Luna, Terra, Genesis, EOS, none of those. So we're actually about flat on the year, which is pretty good in a down 65% market. And then I run a law firm. So in the middle of running the hedge fund back in 2011, and then again in 2013, I wound up as lead customer counsel pro bono in two major bankruptcies. So the MF Global bankruptcy, which was caused by one of Obama's biggest donors, John Corzine, taking over 1.6 billion from the customer segregated trust accounts, which has raised a lot of parallels with FTX. There's a lot of similarities with that case. Then I also helped on a smaller bankruptcy pro bono called PFG, helped recover about 300 million assets there. And I'm actually a whistleblower against my own regulator, the National Futures Association, whose executive committee I was on after all this. So, every day there's a new little corner of the financial world that needs to get cleaned up, unfortunately.
I feel like that's probably part and parcel, especially for the financial world. Not to be some market hating commie, I'm not, but it does seem to history shows that it tends to be second, maybe behind like the military industrial complex, one of the more sketchy industries or markets. Could you explain exactly what the FTX story is? I mean, I would like to say for my listeners, but more than anybody, for myself, could you explain what exactly is? I mean, I know it's a cryptocurrency, but like, why is this different than any other one going belly up?
Um, well, so it's a very large one to begin with, right? So FTX was a crypto exchange. There's actually about 130 different entities involved, and it really got a lot of the quote unquote smart money and connected money. So you have some of the biggest venture capital firms, biggest investment banks, and asset managers on Wall Street all bought into like the general partner, right, of the whole business there, right? And you also have a lot of apparent political contributions. It seems most of those are to the Democrats, but if you follow the money, what it appears at this stage is that a lot of the taxpayer money that went to the Ukraine, supposedly for military aid, was voted on by the Dems, sent to Ukraine, and then looks to have gone back through FTX, and then FTX was like the second largest donor to Biden and a lot of other Democrats. And then you've got one, Senator Gillibrand from New York, that said she's going to donate the campaign contributions to charity, which to me is one of the most like selfish, tone deaf things you could do,
Mm-hmm.
given that you're looking at least 8 billion in customer money that's gone out of accounts that they were promised in writing were segregated.
And so, are we actually going to see repercussions from this? I mean, is this just a shaking a fist at the sky, or I mean, because if I'm correct, didn't he flee the United States? I don't know if he's back, but didn't he like get on a plane and someone was tracking it to like South America or something?
Yeah, so FDR is based in the Bahamas, which, by the way, has called for criminal charges. There's been no call that I've seen from any U.S. regulator or Department of Justice for arrest warrant or anything like that. To me, as an attorney, if I see $8 billion at least missing, where it looks like he may have as much as 3.3 billion himself.
Jeez.
To me, arrest warrant is kind of job one, right? That's how I would handle it. But I'm not the attorney general for better or for worse. Sorry, call was coming in.
You're good.
But so he's in the Bahamas, yeah. And to me, I'm a big believer in Occam's razor, which is like the simplest explanation is oftentimes the correct explanation. And I saw his flight tracker of his private jet, which he apparently bought with stolen customer money, flying to Argentina, which is a non-extradition state. And then they try to do the Jedi mind trick, saying he's not on the plane, he's in the Bahamas. My gut was that he actually was in Argentina, though on TikTok, there's now video of him like running around the Bahamas, apparently. So it's possible he is still in the Bahamas, though people could always, edit metadata. So I cannot personally say with certainty which non-U.S. country he is currently in.
I mean,
and I shouldn't laugh. I mean, it's an awful situation, but
no,
it's also just kind of farcical,
I
right?
mean, you can't help but, I mean, primarily because like Argentina, I mean, there's not exactly a good historical echo of people fleeing there. I mean, if you want to go back to
Well,
1945.
there are a lot of communists, right? I mean,
Well,
so he'd be in good company there.
not only that, but you're also looking at I don't know, a one Dr. Mengele, maybe an Adolf Eichmann, they also fled to Argentina. Not exactly the best.
Hashtag awkward.
Yeah,
Awkward.
some U-boats went there. So, Mossad went and captured Adolf Eichmann there. Not exactly you don't go there if you've done nothing wrong. Not to slander Argentina. I'm sure they're wonderful people. But
Look, I've been to Argentina. They got really good steak.
I'm
They got
sure it's
good
great.
ballbacks. Nice people, right? I don't think I have to worry about getting extradited, hopefully. But
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, but this should be, and as I get older over the years, older, I'm 32, but even just compared to 2 years ago and 2 years before that, the naivety is slowly boiling off, kind of like the sun removing the fog in the morning, to where, yeah, evil kind of gets away. And no, it's not always justice isn't always brought. In some cases, like yours against Corzine, you did, which is brilliant.
well, to
Um,
some extent, but a lot of people don't know this. I actually wrote an indictment for him.
okay.
There used to be a provision under Tennessee law where a private citizen could actually pursue a criminal prosecution. And then that law, in the middle of me working on this, was changed because a Tennessee Titan football player skipped out on a cab fare, and the cab driver went to the magistrate and swore out a felony warrant against him. And this became big news in Tennessee, and they changed the law saying you actually need a magistrate to sign a felony warrant there. So I actually wrote, in conjunction with the Northwestern Law Investor Protection Center, we wrote an indictment and a charging memo, turnkey, presented to the Attorney General of Tennessee. I get mail read notifications on my emails. They still open it periodically. It's been opened like at least 50 times, but no one has actually prosecuted the felony theft indictment that I wrote for Corzine. And more importantly, the Obama administration was very subtle about this. Again, he was one of Obama's biggest campaign donation bumblers, but they ran out the statute of limitation on federal criminal prosecution on him. And Obama's last week in office, they settled the civil charges against him for 1.6% of his net worth, so $5 million, when he stole about 1.6 billion, which actually cost 6.7 billion to be frozen for a long time. So I call Corzine Obama's Mark Rich. Obama was much more subtle than Clinton in bringing this kind of de facto pardon about, but it's something that no one has really held Obama or his predecessor Biden accountable for. And then you look now, you're 11 years later after that global bankruptcy, and you see another major Democratic donor through the Democratic president receiving massive amounts of donations from someone who had stolen, apparently, from customer segregated funds. And by the way, Gary Gensler is now chairman of the SEC, had given Sam a lot of access to both the SEC and then the CFTC gave FTX a lot of access to into U.S. regulators, where they were essentially at the front of the line to be one of the first properly regulated U.S. crypto exchanges. Okay, but Gensler was Corzine's buddy at Goldman, and he dealt with Corzine on his personal email, just like Hillary did, to avoid federal records retention laws, right? And then Gensler essentially recused the entire CFTC from having a supremely active role in the MF Global bankruptcy. So in MF Global, you had 38,000 commodity customers, and there was something like maybe a couple hundred securities customers. But Gensler let the securities industry insurance corp handle the liquidation of Global instead of having the CFTC, supervise it. So I wound up doing the CFTC's job for free as a 30-year-old attorney who had never taken a class in bankruptcy, and had my 23-year-old little sister with an advertising degree and a commodity broker, John Rowe, whose dad was a congressman, and that was my staff. Okay, fighting against trustees who billed 2.6 billion with a B in fees.
Jesus. So Sam Bankman is this guy's not an idiot. This guy's playing with like the uppermost demons, if you will, of
Yeah.
the financial industry.
Well, both
And
his girlfriend's parents and his are very entrenched with the Democratic power structure.
so back to my initial statement, like, is it naive to say something should be done about this, or is this one of the things where you pat him on the head and you're like evil gets away, the demon, as Bill Hicks said, we kill all the saints and the demons run amok. I mean, but if this is really from aid to Ukraine being funneled through, allegedly, through FTX and back to Democratic campaigns, I mean, I feel like this should be like a softball case. Or is that my own naivety?
I mean, if the DOJ is motivated, and the problem is, the DOJ is the only U.S. institution that could prosecute federal criminal crimes, right? The FBI investigates them. You have the SEC or the CFTC make criminal referrals, but Department of Justice has to do it, and you have an inherent conflict of interest in that the DOJ reports to the president, and then the president has received $50 million from this guy, right? So we ran on the same thing in MF Global. So in MF Global, my biggest ally in Congress was a guy named Michael Grimm from Staten Island. Guy was a former Marine, former FBI agent, and went deep undercover to bust a mob-owned hedge fund, almost got killed in that, right? And look, he's a rough-talking guy from Staten Island. He was a Tea Party Republican. A lot of people did not like him. Like, the Tea Party had named him the #1 most targeted seat in Congress while all this was going down. And Grimm got Corzine to lie under oath. We collaborated on a letter to Eric Holder proving that Corzine committed perjury in Congress because he testified before Congress. He, quote, simply didn't know where the customer money was. And then the CFTC complaint came out later, and the CFTC, to their credit, went through all the tape lines, and they got him on tape lines moving the customer money to meet Corzine's margin call on his own personal trading. Okay. But the FBI didn't even question Corzine for over a year after MF Global, with 1.6 billion missing on his watch, right? So Grimm goes to the Attorney General and says, we need to have an independent counsel appointed because there's a conflict, given that Eric Holder is appointed by Obama. Obama is a recipient of millions of dollars of donations from Corzine's bundling activities. And what does Holder do? He starts a federal probe against Michael Grimm.
Jesus.
Okay. So the first thing they do is they created a completely fabricated fundraising scandal on the front page of the New York Times, claiming that he illegally took campaign money from Israel. This was out there for over a year, completely debunked. There was no there, no charges came out of it. From what I see, it was completely fictional. Okay. So what do? They indict him on 37 counts of tax evasion. They wound up getting him to plead guilty on one count. Okay. And now keep in mind, Corzine took 1.6 billion out of SEG funds, right? Wasn't even interviewed by the FBI for a year. Grimm, you know what the count they got him on?
What?
So something like 10 years or so before he was in Congress, he owned a health food store called Healthalicious. And they claimed that he didn't pay the payroll taxes for his delivery drivers at Healthalicious.
You cocksuckers.
Corzine stole from farmers, ranchers, Coca-Cola, Southwest Airlines, Coke Industries, 38,000, retirees, hedge funds, companies that were hedging MF Global, a year for him to get interviewed by the FBI. Grimm, 10 years before, for bringing this to demand that the attorney general do something about it. He literally served 9 months in jail, okay, for not paying payroll taxes on his restaurant delivery drivers.
So it's all the more impressive that you were actually able to, I guess, reclaim or win back any of the funds for Corzine's, I guess I would say customers, but victims. So it's not
Thank you.
entirely impossible because you did it, and it was the largest in history, if I'm correct.
The 8th largest bankruptcy in U.S. history.
So what would it take for charges or any sort of justice, even if 1% or a token justice, to be brought against Bankman-Fried or Fried? Would it take
Yeah,
would it take you?
well, let's see. I mean, I'm talking to several customers in FTX. There is a possibility that I get involved in running what's called a customer committee within the bankruptcy. God knows I'm not afraid to call
I know you're not.
a spade. So we'll see. I mean, it's tricky, right? Because I am regulated by the SEC and the CFTC. I'm a federal whistleblower. But they've tried to mess with me in the past, and I'm a hard guy to fight with. But I've got no problem calling for Gensler to resign. He should resign. There should be special counsel to probe, his activity, should probe the CFTC's activity. But you asked me what's going to take, and in MF Global, I didn't just go to court, right? I went to court a lot. I was the lead trial attorney. I was in every single hearing, right, and advocated loudly in almost every hearing, and created a plan with Susan Osmanski and John Rowe that the judge actually wound up accepting over the trustee from Lehman Brothers for an interim distribution. So we were able to get like 4.2 billion out in about 10 weeks when the trustee wanted to make people wait 9 months for a penny, right? So we had a very large immediate impact, but the way we got the money back finally was using the media. People like you, like Rick Santelli, who some consider the founder of the Tea Party. Rick had me on roughly once a week through the entire bankruptcy. And he allowed me to be, aggressive and, point out that JP Morgan had, 5 different conflicts in the bankruptcy, right? And I was so antagonistic that they actually Kanye'd me 10 years before Kanye got Kanye'd. So really Kanye got Koutoulas, but they closed my bank accounts and credit cards in the middle of this, which then I tweeted the letter of them doing this, and Business Insider wrote a story about it 16 minutes after I tweeted it, had it published, right? And then it was in the New York Times, it was in Forbes, and that really embarrassed them into settling the case, right? Because they were taking so much reputational heat. But they called Santelli, and they actually threatened him for pulling all of JP Morgan Chase's advertising nationwide if they kept having me on. So there was actually a period where I was on Bloomberg more than CNBC during this. But long story short, we have a different media climate now, right? It's really hard to get any kind of mainstream press where you're talking about, taxpayer to Ukraine to FTX to Biden.
You can't get it.
They don't want to talk about that. So, like guys like you having me on and, getting circulation this way is super important. And I think even beyond that, the Dems are going to have to hear outrage from their base. So if out of all the victims, it looks like 8 billion plus, if any of those are Democrats or live in Democratic districts, they got to do what we did at MF Global and aggressively tweet at their congressional representatives, call their office. Every office has a dedicated person answering the phones and talking to constituents, and that's the one thing they care about, right? And this conveniently came like a couple days after the midterms, right? So you've got 2 years before you can hold anybody accountable in general. So people have to stay mad about this for 2 years, demand independent counsel, and say if you don't give the money back to the estate, not to charity, but to the estate where it could go back to customers, okay, I am going to campaign against you, even though I'm a Democrat. That's what's going to take is for their own party to say, I care more about the rule of law and making sure that we don't let the Bahamas be more first world than us in terms of the pursuit of criminal charges here. And I'm going to vote against you if you don't abide for the rule of law. And that's what we're missing in this country. That's why we have a 2-tier justice system, because there aren't a lot of people like me who will put their own business risk, businesses at risk to advocate that the rule of law is the most important thing in the U.S.
Well, we're also kind of seeing a manifestation of really no one willing to even get uncomfortable. Like, you have people on YouTube talking about the importance of the First Amendment and not being censored, but not one of them will interview a Dr. Malone, a Dr. McCullough. If I can get in touch with them, if I can interview them each multiple times, multiple months before they ever went on Rogan, there's no excuse for it. So you
Yeah, and I
have,
gotta tell you, Malone in particular, like I know him personally. He was involved with Let's Go Brandon Coin.
yeah, yeah. Shout out,
One of
let's
the
go
most
Brandon Coin and the pin on your
let's
shirt
go
for anybody
Brandon Coin.
watching. I'll put the link
You
to all that
gotta
stuff in the description.
got a rep, even though it's been a rough year. But Robert Malone, man, what a classy, thoughtful, articulate man. He's like one of the kindest people I've ever met. We'll talk about individual cases of people who've had myocarditis, blood cancer, all the awful side effects that came out of this undisclosed, mandated science experiment that is, my view, is a violation of the Geneva Convention, right? And that is the guy you're going to censor and deplatform. Um, and people look, people are waking up. I mean, you look at what happened in Florida, where DeSantis instituted voter ID, right? Ran like tight ships in elections where they, counted 7.7 million votes in one day, like the day after a hurricane, by the way,
It's
right? And
insane.
you
Yeah,
see Florida, Florida used to be a punchline, now, it's Make America Florida,
yeah.
right? And, you need more people to follow the hope that we have for the rest of the country in terms of, having elections with integrity, with pushing back against, this like child grooming stuff, pushing back against vax mandates, which, by the way, everybody who is, pro, I don't even call them vaccines, but pro jabs,
Mm-hmm.
right? Go to Florida, where we only had 10 weeks of really kind of any COVID restrictions. We actually have the highest level of antibodies in the country too,
What a
right? So like
surprise.
we're the most immune, and you see it now. Like people in New York are getting sick again because Omicron and these later variants, you actually have negative efficacy. You take the jabs, you're actually more susceptible for subsequent variants. And you talk about that up until a couple months ago, you were banned from all social media channels.
And I think what we're seeing is so let's try to unpack it. We saw a uniform and lockstep approach to all censorship revolving around the COVID vaccine, right? YouTube, Reddit, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, whatever. And then on today's the 21st, so 21 days ago, on October 31st, 2022, the Intercept article came out, the DHS leaks, the Department of Homeland Security, how not only was the Biden administration actively working with nightly shows, comedians, even SNL. They were actually putting memos forward for ideas for skits to shame and to ostracize the anti-vaxxers, which really starts to make you think about that Stephen Colbert bit with the vaccine, that dystopian dance he did. But then we're also seeing one, because that much I think anyone could have guessed, but what we're also seeing is the existence of actual government portals into the back ends made by and in communication with Instagram, Facebook, Reddit, Twitter, YouTube. In actual violation, because I was, as much as I hate YouTube and iTunes and all these things for banning me, I've always said, maybe I'm just a cuck, but I've always said they're private companies. They can do whatever they want. They are free, and they are free to shoot themselves in the foot. As much as I don't like that, I do stand by that. What they are doing by having back end portals for the government to suggest and have an expedited front of the line, we don't like this thing, can you flag it and take it down? That's a violation, and that is a streamlined, mechanized violation of the First Amendment. That wasn't a one-off. That wasn't a bad apple. It happened so much they had actually. You don't accidentally make a back end portal. You code that. That
Right?
is maintained. You don't the
It's
stuff
like accidentally setting up your own email server.
you might
I
accidentally
slipped. Oh, look, there's an email server. Like,
you
oh,
might
there's a back end.
accidentally like
Oops.
blow up a propane tank, but you don't accidentally. 1933 Germany doesn't accidentally start manufacturing tanks. It It is an
Right.
intense, intentional thing. So my point of saying all of this is I don't think it is wild to assume that we'll find out in a year or 2 years that if you can see something so clearly, like a year and a half ago, the coordinated suppression of COVID vaccine data, and now we're finding out that there was back ends into it, and then you only have to
Well,
go one step.
so on the back end portal stuff, I assume you know DC Drano, aka Rogan
Mm-hmm.
O'Hanley.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he found evidence that the state of California, I believe it was colluding with Twitter
Uh-huh. Yeah, I
to
remember
ban
that.
him. So he's litigating that. So, you
Good.
know, he's someone who's actually had the stones to take him to court. And I want to say they have a major hearing December 6th.
Okay.
It's been a couple of weeks since I talked to him about it, but like Rogan's a great guy,
I've
good
tried to get him
friend,
on
you
here.
know.
He never responds. I've
Really? I'll
yeah,
ask. I'll
I've
text him.
emailed
I'll
him.
text
Please
him when
do.
we
That
get
would be
off.
amazing. I love him.
Rogan's the man.
I love
Okay, but
him.
he's one of the few attorneys, like, you know, the trial bar, you know, does, you know, does some bad things, they do some good things, but they lean predominantly left, right? And he's one of the few conservative activist attorneys like me, you know, who are willing to take people to court.
Mm-hmm.
Because let me tell you, it's not easy, man. Suing City Hall is not easy. Suing
No.
these big donors, man, it's like years of your life. You know, going up against people with multi-billion-dollar war chests.
Yeah.
You know, it's very hard to sue City Hall and win. But you know, I've done it once. You know, I'm looking at ways to help, you know, FTX and possibly do it again. But Rogan is doing it on the free speech, you know, government collusion angle. So hats off to him.
Absolutely. Um, and everything I'm saying from this point is speculation, but my point is if we have all these things, which were once, and by once I mean 18 months ago, postulated, now we're seeing again, you don't accidentally code a back end, wasn't a one-off, somebody hands a note to somebody in the halls of Congress. We're actually seeing a system. Well, then let's go one step further and look at the corruption within government. I don't think it's that absurd to think there was probably direct lobbying from Moderna, Pfizer, AstraZeneca, Johnson and Johnson. So if that's the
Follow the
case,
money, man.
exactly. If that's the case, and we're seeing the DHS leaks that they didn't want to just do vaccines, they wanted to expand to the withdrawal from Afghanistan, the border, inflation rates, which, what a surprise. Once we opened the Overton window, they just kept shoveling shit through. I don't think it is, and I speak for myself and not Mr. Koutoulas, I don't think it is that absurd to think that we'll find out in months or years that there is a direct back end portal, or at the very least, a suggestion for no one to cover the FTX scandal because everyone in power that has those back end portals seem to have their fingers in the pies of FTX. I mean, maybe I'm a wild conspiracy theorist, like I haven't heard that before, but that I would make that assumption on Monday, November 21st, 2022, that we will eventually find some leak or something that is happening. So maybe it does. Maybe it does take you. You know, I can complain about people not interviewing Malone or McCullough and then eventually realize that who's going to do it. Well, you look in the mirror and you go, well, why not me? Or you taking Corzine to court. Eventually you realize, well, if no one's doing something, maybe I have to do something. I don't know how to do anything against Sam Bankman Fried. I didn't know about it until a week ago, but that's absurd. That's a special kind of evil to take war aid and funnel it through FTX back to the party give. And who knows? Maybe it's just my own naivety as I get older, and then I realize, well, this has probably been going on forever. I mean, Kennedy didn't exactly get into office without the help of the mafia and his father's bootlegging business. But still, it doesn't make it right, and it's disgusting. I don't know, man. I think that you do need to do it. Not to make you Superman and throw it on your back, but I think you need to spearhead this.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, it's honestly comes down to enough customers thinking, you know, I'm the guy, right? And you know, getting, you know, now I actually have, after 11 years of quietly, you know, fighting, you know, similar bad guys, you know, in arbitrations and whatnot. Like, you know, I have a real legal operation. It's not just, you know, me and my little sister and
Yeah.
John anymore. So
Um, what would you need for that to go forward? Is there anything I can do? Are there any I've had on who was it? I think RFK Jr.'s lawyer, the guy that fought and successfully won and beat against Monsanto. I mean, I know some people. I mean, is there anything I can? And I don't know. Maybe we should be talking about this off air. But is there
Yeah, I
is there?
mean, it's really just, people with large, exposure as customers to FTX. If they just email me, they can go to koutoulas.law.com and there's a contact form. Just tell me about the case. And um, it's different. Like at MF Global, I mean, I was getting thousands of phone calls, a day, like, asking for help. So it's and I had more direct involvement there because two of my big customers had chosen to clear their separately managed accounts there. FTX, like we were smart enough to, read the writing on the wall that he was full of shit, and
Mhm.
we never put a dollar there. So we have no direct exposure, but I'm not someone who wants to sit by and see, 8 billion go out the window for these, poor victims, and there's a lot of those people who couldn't afford to take those hits, right? So, if I can
Yeah.
help, I will help.
Yeah. And I know I gotta let you go in 5 minutes, but real quick, how are you able? Someone like myself, a total layman, what were the things that you could look at him and go, he's full of shit? I just don't touch any of it because I don't. I take Warren Buffett's advice. If you don't understand it, don't invest in it. And so I take my knuckle dragging knowledge and go, all right, just don't do that. But someone like yourself, how do you look at him? Because I imagine
Well,
he would
so the
take me
first,
for a ride.
yeah, I mean, it's just I know the signs of con man. Like I have a
Okay.
bullshit detector, right? Like I started my hedge fund on my credit cards in the financial crisis. Like I know what it takes, to do, like hard work and take
Yeah.
risks and be successful and weather storms and like build an actual business with like operations and compliance and all of that. And then I know people who just talk bullshit. And the number one thing is if anyone ever sells you something that's too good to be true, it probably is, right? Like
Hmm.
that's supposed to be a cliche, but people ignore it time and time again. And like major VCs who get paid absurd fees to do due diligence on deals, they did no due diligence. Like their auditors were bullshit. Like they didn't have a board, they didn't have a CFO. You know, sure they put in writing that they had account segregation, but like it's crypto. Like that's worth the paper it's printed on. There is no legal designation for that. At least when we looked at them, they didn't have what's called a SOC 2 internal controls audit, right? Which all the major platforms have now, right? And that if they don't have that, like we don't put a dollar money there.
Gotcha.
So the crypto.com, Coinbase, Gemini, they all have that,
Gotcha.
right? Um, and then you look at the signs of narcissism, like throwing millions and millions of dollars around and in campaign contributions, like bailing out everybody and so that happened since the crypto winter in May. Like, where are they getting the money from that? Are there that many people, trading on FTX? Like, it just none of that, made any sense. So, if it doesn't make sense, it's probably a fraud. I mean, especially in crypto,
Yeah.
and in crypto too, like there's one really important premise, right? And that it all originated, blockchain exists out of decentralization, right? And it's trustless because it takes 1,000+ computers to authenticate a single transaction. Now, as soon as you go back to an exchange, you're re-centralizing the access to the decentralized protocol, and
Oh.
you're creating a single point of failure.
Oh.
Okay, so the question is, why do you ever want to do that? Why do you want to go in exchange? Now, crypto funds, we have to sometimes, right? To trade it
Yeah.
actively, right? But if you look at the strides made in like DeFi, which has some of its own issues, right? But at least decentralized exchanges, you don't have that single point of failure. You have a similar open source auditable code that you have in Bitcoin itself. So no one has ever hacked a decentralized crypto transaction, but there's been tons of hacks, tons of frauds at the re-centralization points. So you've got to do your due diligence anytime you look at accessing at the centralized entity.
There are some similarities between that and if you want true decentralization, you look at the nuclear triad of the US military, specifically the ground-based ICBMs. The silos they build are all contained within themselves. The operation control, the generator, the backup generator, the backup generator, the barbed wire around it, the Marines they have fully deployed full time on US soil that authorized to kill even if a raccoon or a Russian or a Chinese guy or just somebody wandering over comes into them. They tried to cut costs. I want to say in like the 70s or 80s, and they're like, instead of having 1,000 silos with 1,000 different operation centers, they're like, what if we just build 100 and then have a central operation center? And it was squashed because they're like, because then you just need to nuke the central thing, and you knock the whole thing out. So you want true decentralization. Truly, you want people that don't fuck around. I would imagine that use the nuclear missile silo. There is no central point. No one could, not even us. We couldn't disable our own nuclear missile silo. That's decentralization. So I guess that's a good point. If there is that centralized, there's probably a con man. And then I know you got. I'll let you run real quick though. What's the future of Let's Go Brandon Coin?
Yeah, so Let's Go Brandon Coin. There's like some litigation that's been filing alleging that I conspired with NASCAR, which is just
The fuck?
absurd. Yeah, like if you recall, NASCAR had in writing approved the sponsorship of Brandon Brown's coin. I've never even spoken to NASCAR personally, right? Like we did a sponsorship agreement with Brandon's NASCAR team. They submitted it. It was approved. The team sent out a press release, coin soared. The NASCAR leaked it to the media. Coin started tanking. The NASCAR maliciously partnered with I believe it was the North Carolina LGBT Chamber of Commerce. Was trolling us on their own social media, networks. So I think the intent there to damage the coin is clear. So hopefully the judge will dismiss the case against me, alleging that I conspired with NASCAR to, hurt the coin that I was the major proponent of. And then we'll go on the offensive and hold NASCAR responsible because I really want to make "Go Woke, Go Broke" a truism there because
Yes.
NASCAR deserves it.
That phrase needs to be in bold in a social studies book for some kid in the year 2070. That needs to go down as just like great society or war defense power. One of the definitions you have to memorize. That should be at the back of the book in 5th grade. Go woke, go broke. Financial freedom.
Absolutely.
And the footnote will say James Koutoulas, and that's
Well,
right.
I can't take credit for it. I mean, you gotta give some love to DeSantis, who in his victory speech said that Florida is where woke goes to die. But yeah, I mean, and look, if you look this year at Disney, Netflix, Meta,
Yeah.
the companies that have gone woke, PayPal with their $2,500, we're
Oh
going to take
yeah.
$2,500 out of your bank account for spreading misinformation. Look at all their stock charts, and it's
Love it.
it is proved to be a truism. These ones
Yeah.
pitching this woke agenda. So look, we just got to keep fighting. And I appreciate you having me on
Of
and
course,
having
man.
guys, like Malone on, who people want to censor.
Yeah.
So I think it shows that we're doing something right. So I appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. And this is your platform. You come on whenever you want. You got my information. You literally come on here as much as you want. You get involved with FTX, or you want to talk about the case with NASCAR, dude. This is your pulpit. Come scream on here. I'll sit back, have a cup of coffee. I'll let you take it. I don't care. I don't give a shit, dude.
I,
Fuck these people.
I
Fuck them.
appreciate it. And I'll text Drado and see
Dude, that would be
if we can
so
get him
cool.
on.
Please send him an episode or something. Whatever. Send him something cool. That would be because someone that's been IP banned from YouTube, IP banned from Reddit, and then just normal banned from Twitter and iTunes. Yeah, I would appreciate that. I've been
I'm texting him right now.
please do, man. That would be
We'll
so
see.
cool.
Fingers crossed. I got to hop.
Yeah,
Thank you for having me. And
absolutely, man.
hopefully we can see some criminal charges in FTX.
Hell yeah. Well, yeah. I will send you this episode when it's up. It'll be up later today. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for everything you do. And yeah, go woke, go broke. God bless America, everybody.